After I was bankrupted and my health was ruined and my marriage was broken, and the usual things that happen to people that tell the truth about Scientology, I decided that I'd take a kind of hiatus. So for 17 years, I had absolutely nothing to do with Scientology. I did not read about it. I didn't really much think about it. I had a couple of friends who were ex-members, got Christmas cards, that kind of thing. I did other things with my mind. And when I came back, I talked to a friend in Los Angeles, and he said, there's this woman called Tory Christman. And he said, she's kind of the rock star of ex-Scientology. And I went online and watched this video, and I went, this woman's incredible. She is one of the great stand-up comedians of all time. And so here she is. Give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me? And thank you, John. And definitely thank you, Jim. And everyone here that's come here, and everyone that's watching this. And also I want to thank everyone in the world who stands up and speaks out exposing the abuses of the Church of Scientology, which in my book, thank you. And just for Pete Griffith's sake and anyone else, they have my YouTube site is Tory Magoo 44 on YouTube, and I've made over 700 videos. So if anyone's going, well, I'm not quite getting what these people are saying, check it out, because they're all like 5 minutes long, but it's a lot of different topics. My angle's a little bit different. A lot of the people that have been speaking tonight were in the Sea Organization. I was in the Sea Organization for a very short time, and I'm going to talk about that tomorrow night. Because of a physical illness, they routed me out and said I couldn't be part of the Sea Org. But I had that same purpose of like really being, their thing was they were going to clear the planet, right? And I thought, okay, I want to do that. I really do. But then it was like, no, you have epilepsy, so you're out. So the next thing I know, we moved. I got married. I had a wonderful son. I have a wonderful son who has been wonderful. My husband stayed in the Church of Scientology. I woke up in the year 2000 and escaped out. I was chased across the country. And I'll tell you why. I mean, it's kind of like I was a public. So most of the people that have been talking here in the last few days were Sea Org. They were part of the Sea Organization, and some of them very, very high up. As the lady said tonight at dinner, it's management, Sea Org, staff, and then the bottom of the barrel are the public, and then non-Scientologists. And that's kind of how Scientologists see things. They really do. It's almost like a matrix. Like they can look at you and go, and they have you targeted for what tone level you are. Is she upstat or downstat, meaning good, bad? PTS, not PTS. PTS is a potential trouble source, which I'm going to explain more tomorrow night. But they decided I was a potential trouble source because I have epilepsy. I take medication for it, and I'm going to go over this whole story tomorrow night. But in the meantime, I'm in Scientology. I got in it to help people. So now I get married. I have my son. We moved to Clearwater, Florida. I had never really been around Germany when the whole Nazi thing happened, and I always used to think, how does this happen? But in Clearwater, Florida, it was sort of like that. It wasn't the same, but I mean, it was massive rednecks up and down the street, save sparkling Clearwater, stamp out Scientology. And they order me into the Guardian's office, and they say, look, here's the deal. Richard Tenney is the city commissioner, and he is running for mayor. And we need you to handle this, because we came here on a lie. And I'm like, what? And he said, well, L. Ron Hubbard was going to go on land in, I think, Georgia. And they found out that the FBI were going to plant drugs on the ship. And so they zoomed around to Clearwater, bought the Fort Harrison under a lie, so they are liars. And he said, we lied to him. So you need to go and handle these people and get rid of them. And I'm like, me? It's like, moi? And he said, yeah, you do. So I was like, all right, whatever, I'll try it. And I did. And I went out and I went around. And the Guardian's office was the guys that 11 people ended up going to prison because of it, right? Including Mary Sue Hubbard, L. Ron Hubbard's wife, they threw under the bus. So, now I'm out there trying to help them. And the first thing I do is I see an older woman, and she's holding something about getting rid of Scientology and an American flag. And so I walked over to her and I said, this is awful. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And she said, rack, rack, rack. And I said, look at my son. He's crying. That's what you're doing. All these people honking and everything. This is my religion. Go home. Put down your flags. Go home. So she did. She put her flags down and she left. And as that happened, I just kept going person to person around Clearwater, going to meetings. I joined Safe Sparkling Clearwater. It was one thing after another. But my mother, I grew up in Chicago in a suburb, and my mother was the queen of parties. No matter what we did, it was like, have a party. If we needed to rake leaves, she'd have a leaf raking party and say, bring a rake, we're gonna rake. So I was used to have a party, and I said, you know what? These people think we have long fangs, which most Scientologists are good people. It's the executives, and definitely David Miscavige, who does have long fangs and is really an evil, creepy guy. And horns. Well, horns is another issue, but but anyway, and also because they took me off my medicine, I forget things all the time. So who has a good memory here? Anyone? Okay, so you remember what I'm talking about, because if I forget, I'm going to ask you. Thank you. All right. I always have to clarify that because I usually do forget what I'm talking about. And it's not intentional. It's part of, most people who know me know that. And now I forgot where I was. Where am I? The parties. Okay. So I say, you know what? We need to have a party and let these people know who we are. And just everybody, if you're a teacher, talk about teaching. If you're a realtor, talk about real estate. Because there were Scientologists in all these different careers. But everyone was being a Scientologist, right? And they were like, Scientology is horrible. So we had this party. I said, you can't talk about Scientology. Nothing. Don't mention it. Just talk about who you are and find out who they are. And at the end of the party, I think it was like a week later, they had the vote for Richard Tenney or not, and he was slammed out of office. And which is, I feel sad about it. I'm sorry about it. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but it's one of those things that I helped the church, and as a church member, it was a good thing. As a person, now looking back on it, I feel kind of bad about it because it was, it wasn't good for him, but it was good for the church. But I didn't get who the church was at the time. But my point in telling you that is I went kind of from zero to, now I'm just a public again. I'm not a Sea Org, right? I'm just a volunteer. And I kind of go from 0 to like 20. Just like that. They paid me $23,000, which I have actually their thing that they paid me, if anybody wants to see it afterwards, but I brought it. In training awards, which any Scientologists know is like nothing. It's nothing, but it's still $23,000 because they thought I did this. Anyway, so there I am. Now I'm helping. Soon the Guardian's office went down and they created the Office of Special Affairs, telling me and everyone else it's just PR and legal. So for all that time, I think this was 1979, until 2000 when I woke up, I really and truthfully did not believe they did fair game. Fair game is where L. Ron Hubbard said you can lie, cheat, steal, destroy someone utterly. And I stood up in court against Marjorie Wakefield, right, and said, that's not true, they don't do that. I really, really, really did not believe they did. Until, now you can see how black my top is. Imagine a pinhole with light coming through it. In 2000, I'll tell you what happened, but I'm not there yet. But that's how, I was like this black jacket, I just didn't get it. And I didn't believe them, but they would send me out to handle the critics. The critics would be out picketing, and I'd be out there saying, why don't you go home and all this stuff. So now, roll forward, Scientology is a lot like this. It's like a pyramid. It's like a triangle. And it has different levels, like I've mentioned. You have to pay for every single level. I worked my way up to OT VII. The only reason was because L. Ron Hubbard, when I was routed out of the Sea Org, I got a letter from L. Ron Hubbard, and he said, you need to handle epilepsy, and then we'll see you up the line. So I changed from, if these are two goals, one was to help people and be an auditor, and the other one is I have to fix myself. So now I'm on this path to fix myself, which was really, just a losing streak, obviously. So when anyway, I won't get into the whole epilepsy thing because I'm telling you that tomorrow, but it was pretty bad, and my mother saved my life. So now I work my way, let's say OT III. How many here have heard of OT III? And Xenu and the space aliens and BTs and clusters and all that. So nutty. You just think, who would believe that? Now, first of all, I want to make another thing very clear. We who got in, I got in 1969, there was no internet. There was no internet for years for us. So we couldn't just, go into Google and find out. You know what I mean? There was nothing. If you wanted to find out the dark side of Scientology, you had to go over to someone's house. And they tracked you, and then you'd be declared suppressive, and once you're declared suppressive, you lose all your friends. My husband divorced me over this when I finally woke up, and he's still in. His parents were in, so he was born in it. Thankfully, my son was with me on it, but that's only because we know so many kids who killed themselves, and I don't know how, but I had the courage to say to him, if you don't want to do it, just tell me right now. And when I was way in it, way up at the top, and he said, I don't want to do it, Mom. And I said, then that's it. Just don't tell anybody because they'll disconnect from you. So, okay, then I get up to the top to OT VII. It doesn't work for me at all. I stay on the level for 7 years. During that time, my auditor and best friend, Bill Yachty, asked me, he said, we've got to handle these critics that are on the internet. This is really a nightmare. And he said, I want you to go see if you can just open up this one account. This is in the mid-90s. I don't know what the internet is. I don't have a clue about it. So he tells me what to do. I go, I open it up. I come back, he has a grin from like ear to ear, and he goes, you have just changed the history of the internet. And I'm like, I don't even know what the internet is. How can I change the history of it, right? But then once they realize, okay, she did that, let's just keep it on a roll. And he says, we need you to do this all the time. We're going to fly you around the United States opening up these phony accounts. Now, they don't call them phony, they're anonymous. But this is years before Anonymous came about. This is in the 90s. Anonymous showed up in 2008. How many people here know about Anonymous? Good. Okay, because a lot of that hasn't been mentioned too much, and it was a major breaking point for all of us and the media and everything. So I always want to thank Anonymous for the people who did that, because it was like rocking in 2008. But this was the 90s, and so now they're flying me around. I have to open up these accounts with a cashier's check, and I have to use a telephone card so nobody can trace it back to the Church of Scientology. Now, people hearing this would probably think, who would do that? But you have to remember, Scientology, they get you in early on, they build in self-censoring. So it isn't the church saying don't say it, you're saying don't say it. Don't tell anybody. You've got to protect the church. That's your job. And it sounds so weird. That's why I call it the Truman Show. When I left, when I escaped out, some critics came up to me and said, how could you be in anything for 30 years and not get it? And I said, did you ever see the Truman Show? And people, person after person goes, oh yeah. And that is Scientology. And if you haven't seen it, rent the movie, because it really is Scientology. Truman was born in a movie set, and he's the only one that doesn't know it's a movie set. And that's how Scientology is. And all of us, we're talking about it today, and people around the world are talking about Xenu and things like that. But the people in the Church of Scientology, oh God, no. Oh, you can't say the word Xenu. If somebody says Xenu, ethics. You're right into ethics. You can't say that word ever. I said the word body thetan to another OT3 in her apartment, and she wrote me up, I was thrown off the level, and I had to do these serious conditions where you have to like work back to get and ask for signatures from everybody. Can I join the group again? I mean, it's pathetic. It is. So in the 90s, I'm opening up these phoning accounts, and I'm not looking on the internet. And I say to my friend, you know, what are you going to do with these accounts? And he goes, Tory, deposition is awful, you know that. I said, I've never been in deposition. He goes, well, do you want to be in deposition? Because that's what these critics are going to do. They're going to put you in deposition for months. And he knew I have a big problem with memory, so I would never remember half the stuff. And he said, you don't want to be in deposition. I said, no. He said, so I won't tell you. And then you can just, if they ever do take you into court, you can say, I don't know, because you really won't know, right? So I'm like, okay. So I'm flying, and I really trusted him. I used to say it in session, I trust him more than anybody in the world, right? I really trusted this guy. Not that he was trustworthy, but I did. Okay, so I'm flying around. I grew up in Chicago. I grew up around the mafia. We had moved from Park Ridge, where I was in the class council with Hillary Clinton, thank you very much, Hillary Rodham, at Maine Township, and then my parents moved to Lake Forest, where a lot of the mafia lived. So I'd kind of been around the mafia and their kids, and this guy Gavino was running this from OT VIII. And he was a real skinny guy from Italy. And I thought, you know, I hated Miscavige by then. I'd been on OT VII for 7 years, and he is an absolute weasel, and that's hardcore. I mean, he's a really sneaky, ratty guy, as far as I'm concerned. So I thought, you know, it's not beyond Miscavige to hire the mafia. It's 10 grand, they could put out these critics. So what if I'm helping the mafia? So now I think, and also the other key point was Nancy Maney, because Nancy had, and she's written a book, My Billion-Year Contract, where she talks about this, but she actually went insane, and of course Bill, our mutual friend, who was getting me to do this, said to me, Tory, Nancy went insane because she was reading the internet. Which, I know it sounds insane, but this was the 90s, and I was like, really? And I had seen her, you know, I'd heard about her like jumping out the back window, and I find out years later when I escape out that they drugged her and reverse audited her, just so I don't forget that. But at the time, that terrified me, so I'm like, wow. And I knew these kids who killed themselves, and he said, that's part of it too. They were looking on the internet. So I was like, wow, this is really, okay, I'm not looking at the internet. But now roll forward and I'm thinking, what if Miscavige hired the mafia? It's not beyond him. He's a real evil guy. So I think, all right, I'm gonna go look. And let's not forget the little icing on the cake. They had put the Net Nanny on all of our computers. For anyone who doesn't know what the Net Nanny is, it was, I think it was 1989. I could be wrong on the years, but Miscavige said we've got to get up to time. We've got to come up to speed as far as the internet, because the world is getting on the internet. So we want everyone to make a little website. So we've got computers all around. Go and write your story. You have a really great story. We need you to write up your story. You do too, right? And we're like, well, okay. And so everyone's writing their story, right? And of course, they're putting in the little hyperlinks. And what are the hyperlinks? Way to Happiness, Narcanon, Criminon. They're stupid front groups, right? But we don't know anything about it, so we're like, okay. Then they hand us a disk, go home and put this on your computer. And I say to them, why would I put this on my computer? Tory, you don't think you have an important story? People are gonna wanna talk to you. Oh, okay. So I pop it in my computer, totally cuts any critical thinking about Scientology. There's nothing. You know, you can't, the rest of the world can look at the good side, the bad side, you know, decide. But not Scientologists. They only see a piece of blue sky, to quote John Atack. So anyway, Bill Yachty comes over to my house. I had just bought an IBM computer and just set it up. And he goes, well, I need to take the Net Nanny off I need to take something off your computer. And I'm like, what would you need to take off my computer? I just bought it. And he's like, well, we put something on it to keep you safe from these really evil critics. And I was like, oh, okay. So he opens it up and he says, I want you to just cruise around the internet. You don't post anything, don't read anything. Just if you see the words, please send me the Knots material, which is, they have OT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I was 7. But Knots is OT 5 on up. So people, that was the only thing that hadn't gotten out in the world. And so they were really worried about Knots getting out. So he said, if you see someone ask for, please send me the Knots material, let me know who. Because then they were going to go after him, right? And so I didn't do it much. I looked a couple of times, but it wasn't really a big part of it. But I'm opening up these phony accounts, and now I start thinking, I got to go look, because maybe they hired the mafia, right? So I go on. I don't know anything about the computer. I open it up. The only news group back then was alt-religion Scientology. That was it. And it's a news group, for anybody who doesn't know, it's just like topics all the way down the page, right? And does everybody in here know what spamming is? Okay, and if anybody watching, if you don't, it's just kind of like driving. Let's say they say L. Ron Hubbard, had three wives, and he says he has 2. Well, they don't want anybody to see that. That's bad news. So they start spamming ARS, trying to get it. Their view was if they could get it onto the second page, nobody would read it. And that's not altogether wrong. So I'm thinking, I opened it up, and the day I opened it up, they had baking recipes on ARS. How to bake German chocolate cake, cupcakes, this and that. And in between were people saying, I didn't say this. Scientology is changing my words. And I'm like, I'm a free speech advocate. I'm like, I just was in terror. Now I realize this is directly coming from David Miscavige. I knew it. It was just like this, all of a sudden the whole game changed. And I was like, I'm terrified. I'm 15 minutes from the Office of Special Affairs. And I knew, there's only 5 of us that know this top secret game. I had to sign a thing, $100,000 I'd never tell anyone, including David Miscavige, blah, 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 all this other stuff. And at the time, I looked at Yachty and I said, this sounds like the Guardian's office. And he goes, Tory, look at me. Trust me. You know me. And I said, oh, okay. I signed the thing. So now roll forward, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I call up Bill, and I go, Bill, I can't really do this anymore. I've got to get back to work. And he goes, okay, just meet us at this apartment in Glendale, which is the next suburb, at 7 o'clock. So I said, okay. So I drive over. Now, because I had signed that thing, you couldn't tell any friends, you couldn't tell your husband or your wife, anybody, right? So my husband didn't know all this stuff was going on. So now I drive over there by myself. And I walk in, and it's about a room probably a little bit bigger than this, but it's like 7 or 8 big men, all OT VIIs or 8s, way up at the top. And they're all friends of mine. And I walk in and I say, hey. And they go, hello. They're like, not friendly. And the lights are very dim. And I think, something's wrong here. I didn't know what, but I knew something was wrong. And I sit down, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking, where's Yachty, right? Where's Gavino? And all of a sudden, bam, the door slams open. Gavino comes walking in. I warned you about her. I told you about her, right? And I look at Bill and I go, he warned you about what? And honestly, up until that second, I was such a true believer. I mean, I was in the Truman Show. I was a Scientologist. I was never going to say a thing. But that night was a game changer for me. They pounded me for about 2 hours. I call it a spiritual rape, where they were just these men yelling stuff at me. And I finally just burst out crying, and I ran out. And Bill came running after me because he knew he screwed up. And he's like, Tory, I said, get away from me. Just get away from me. I got in the car. I drove home. And that's really the night I left Scientology. It took me another probably 3 months. And that's a whole nother story that's on my Tory Magoo 44. If you ever want to really see the whole thing, the escape story and everything, I made a 10-part series. Just type in Tory Magoo 44 in YouTube, + escape, and you can see the whole thing. But we want to go on to some questions, so I don't want to take up too much more time. But that basically was when I left. And then Andreas, who isn't here tonight because his mother, I'm sorry to say, is passing away probably and is very ill, so he had to go home to talk to his family in Norway. But he was the person who helped me wake up. And I told him, he said, I'll see it on the video, and I can't thank him enough. And there were so many people that helped me. Spanky, Nancy, Jesse Prince saved my life many, many times. So, you know, to everyone, there's tons of people. The bunker people, I want to say my love to them. I want to say my love to Facebook, to ESMB, to, you know, just there's so many people around the world that have helped me. And it's just, you never know when you can help someone. I always tell people that you never know. You could say one thing and people say, oh, he's in forever. Well, Spanky told me, we thought you'd be the last person to walk out, you know? But Andrea said, what kind of friends could those be if they're gonna leave you because you change your mind? And that cracked open my whole Truman Show. So, can I take some questions?
We'll just get my mic on here. By the way, I met Tory, we've just met once out in LA, right?
Right.
Twice? Once?
You're asking the memory queen?
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, I think I was just with her once. The school gives me money to travel and interview people for different projects. I just got a new book on Islam out last week. Hope it sells well. I just got an email saying 2 major U.S. reporters want to interview me. That's nice to know. Okay, so I'm with Tory. We go to a restaurant. Now, I've mainly kept discreet over the years. Let me just move up here. And but then I started to interview people, and I'll tell you what's amazing. I told this to Nancy last night at the lounge. There is a huge difference between what you know is true in your head and what you know from when it happens to you. So I knew about, for example, well, in relation to Tory, I knew that people get followed. Private detectives follow people who are critics. So we go to a restaurant, and the big restaurant, I don't remember what it was, and so we're sitting there, and there's hardly anybody in the restaurant. And then Tory says to me partway through the lunch, the people who came in are sitting behind us. I think we have company. Now, if you'd asked me beforehand in a quiz, do Scientology critics get followed? I would have said, well, of course I know that. But when they're sitting behind you, the world changes, right? So that was my introduction to Tory. So she said, you know, after a bit we should go. And I just wanted to turn around and talk to those 2 people. But I had a feeling, if you go into a restaurant, my wife did a study on this in university. When you go into a restaurant and it's quite empty and you sit 2 seats here and there's hundreds of seats over there, if someone comes in, they're not going to sit right behind you. So, but they did. Anyway, okay, let's do questions. Paulette.
Steve Tinney put together I'm sorry, Stephen. Okay. Steve Tinney, who you mentioned, put together
Richard Tinney,
put together a massive anti-Scientology rally at the stadium there. I was, in fact, the keynote speaker. Did that happen before or after they got rid of him? Did you know anything about this? It was at the same time as the Clearwater hearings. He put together a rally, 3,000 people from Clearwater showed up. Yeah. And wow. I wondered whether that happened before or after.
I don't know.
Does somebody know?
Okay, pass it to him.
Were you one of the speakers too?
Let's get you on the little mic here. Have you been followed?
Do I really need to answer that? I was a poor little dumbed down Sea Org member in the Fort Harrison building when all of that was going on. I was an auditor in the Hubbard Guidance Center, and we weren't getting, of course, any news about it. We weren't permitted to get any news from the outside, but little tidbits got to us, you know, from here and there. And we heard about the huge, massive rally that Rich Tenney put on. And
I was part of that.
Oh, Oh, you were great.
I was.
Yes.
I was.
Yes.
What happened was they were on one side of the street going around the block, and so then Scientology set up people going around Fort Harrison, right? And they were in all these goofy costumes, and it ended up being a huge flap for Scientology because they looked like such knuckleheads. Right. Yeah.
You were very much the dominant force.
Yeah, you were definitely but I didn't know you were there. I didn't.
Okay, Tory, we'll go to Steve in a second, but I'll just
Steve.
ask this quickly. Did you said, when those men came in the room that you were a true believer, but you had already realized that Mr. Miscavige wasn't a great guy? So
First
didn't
of all, I never call him Mr. Miscavige.
Okay, I thought you
He's
might
David
say that.
Miscavige.
David, okay. People call him other things on the internet, I've noticed.
I know,
So-
I call him way worse than that, but I won't hear out of respect for you.
Thank you. Okay, how about, so you had doubts about him before you had doubts about Scientology, sort of?
Well, you have to remember, and you're going to hear this tomorrow night, but 72, they took me off my medicine for epilepsy, and I started having grand mal seizures. So at that point, I literally, they have the bridge to total freedom, and I felt like I was on the bridge next to the bridge, right? Because I couldn't really do it, and people would be like, how could you be on your medication? I'd be like, you have a couple grand mal seizures, and then come talk to me about it.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Tory, I find that whole era, this Scientology versus the internet, fascinating. And I've got the quote here from Elaine Siegel from the Office of Special Affairs in 1994. She released an internal Scientology memo which said, briefing to all Scientologists on the internet. Dear Scientologists, as you know, there's been quite a bit of false and derogatory information going out over the internet by a few detractors, squirrels, etc. We have a plan of action that we are taking to simply out-create the entheta on these news groups. And she said, if you imagine 40 to 50 Scientologists posting on the internet every few days, we'll run the SPs right off the system. It will be quite simple, actually. Now, it wasn't quite simple at all.
No, it didn't work at all. It was not only a failure, they tried to cancel ARS. They entered a cancel command, and that brought in computer geeks around the world who said, not on our watch. And this is pre-anonymous, but it was the same kind of thing. Thousands of people said, we don't know anything about those Scientologists, but they have a right to speak, right?
So there was a big pile-on ARS, and it became one of the most popular news groups of the time.
They created it. I told them when I was in, I said, you guys are creating your own enemies.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask you about, was whether there was any internal debate going on about whether this was the right approach to take.
I wasn't part of that. See, you have to understand, in a totalitarian organization, which Scientology is, it is not a religion. I'm going to say that 1,000 times if I have to. You can put the label on it. You have to pay for every level. It's a mafia-like organization. They hurt people. They break up families. They stop free speech. They rope in young kids to billion-year contracts. I know 12 young people personally who took their own lives. 12 young people hung themselves, jumped out of a 15-story window on L. Ron Hubbard's birthday. James Dries shot himself to death. His mother is still in the church. You know, it's like, I know a ton of kids who drowned. It's just awful. And they didn't drown accidentally, as Scientology will say. No. I mean, it's a dangerous, awful organization. And I forgot what your question was.
It was about whether there was, you obviously thought that was not the right,
I thought what?
you thought that was not the right approach that Elaine Siegel was suggesting.
Oh, well, see, at the time, you know, I didn't know about it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The right hand doesn't know what all I knew, I've had parties for 15 years with ex-Scientologists, and every time they come to my house, the talk does not stop. Because everybody is comparing what happened in your room. Oh, I was in this room. Oh, that, you know, like connecting the dots. Because I didn't know they tried to cancel that until I left Scientology, until I escaped out. I didn't know it. I found out from the critics after I left. And a couple of things I wanted to say. I told about the suicide. One thing, just as an idea for anybody, if you're ever in a restaurant and you think it's a Scientologist, the first time I did this, I sat down, just like Jim talked about, somebody sat right next to me, and I thought, I'm not going to go through this my whole life with these people coming. So I said, hang on a minute. And I went over and I said, pardon me, could I ask you a personal question? And the guy's eating eggs, and he goes, yeah, what? And I said, are you a Scientologist? And he goes, God, no, do I look like one? So from then on, wherever I am, if I think they're Scientologists, bam, that's the first thing I say. If they're across the street from my house and I think they're Scientologists, I'm over there. Excuse me, can I ask you a personal question? Are you with the Church of Scientology in any way, shape, or form, paid by them? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And I have two other things, and then I'm going to take your question, but these are wonderful things. Well, I'll tell them at the end. Tell me your question.
Well, let me hand him his mic. You tell us the next thing you want to say.
Okay, I just wanted to tell you two wonderful things. This is why all of you are so important, and everybody around the world speaking out. These two kids called me in 1 week. One of them was outside flag, shaking. He found my phone number, and he said, Tory, I want to leave Scientology, but I'm really scared. I said, all right, who do you know? He said, I don't know anybody. And we went over and over, family, anything. He didn't know anybody. I said, all right, how old are you? And he said, I'm 21. I said, okay, I'm just going to tell you what I would do at your age. I said, it's 10:30 at night, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, start walking. It's a wonderful country, and you'll start remembering your friends. And if any Sea Org are listening to this, you can do it too. It's nothing more than walking across the street with a yellow line in the middle. There's this side, you walk across the street, you're free, you're out. And 2 days later, he called me, I'm on my way. All right, so that's one. And the other one was, it was just so wonderful. Another kid in the same week called me, and he goes, Tory, I'm in Las Vegas, and I saw your videos, and I want to leave, but I got to go back in. I said, don't go back in. So who do you know? And he goes, well, the only person I know is my dad, and I haven't talked to him in 10 years. And I said, all right, call your dad. So he called his dad. His dad called a guy in Vegas. Scientology found out how. They followed him right there to the house. The guy opened the door. He had a shotgun and a knife. He said, you're from the devil. Get the hell off my lawn. So there you go.
Hey. Okay. Quick question.
Sure. First of all, I am quite surprised to see that too many Scientologists here, especially ex-Scientologists, who have been to upper levels like OT VIII. What glued you to guys to this church? I'm a non-Scientologist, I'm a Muslim. What glued you? I mean, if I don't see the benefit, the price of my money, the value of my money, I won't go there. You guys spent 2 decades, 3 decades to a place. Can you fly something like that? Can you lift this thing through intention? Can you move things around? Why
Okay, it's a good question, but you have to understand peer pressure and mind control. It is they definitely use mind control from the beginning. They find out what your buttons are, and don't tell me you don't have some, because everyone in this room has some. And they find out very quickly what they are.
Everybody know what buttons means? The buttons you press? Yeah, okay. Right, good. Okay.
And Jerry?
Tori? Oh, the question, okay.
Jerry had a question.
Well, as I walk there, and it'll take a while, what happened to Bill?
He's still in.
Oh.
Still probably running stuff on the net. His wife died, though, last month.
Okay.
Yes, I would just like to take exception to the idea that Scientology is not a religion.
Okay.
And the reason is that actually serves Scientology's purposes. If they bring the argument down to it's a religion or not a religion, you are going to have academics lining up till the end of time.
Okay.
It's the real approach to Scientology is to acknowledge the fact that they are a religion. Now, they are a religion because the U.S. federal government says they're a religion.
Okay.
The standard that the U.S. federal government sets for religions is simply that an organization itself, only itself, can determine if it is a religion. We cannot, we have no input.
Fair enough.
So it
I
then
get it.
becomes a matter of dealing with them as a religion, and therefore it comes down to religious liberty. Now, my question is, I was the target of a lot of these attacks on ARS, alt-religion Scientology. I was the target of the sporgery. There was a cross between forgeries and spam. They put out forgeries under my name as if they're racist, so portraying me making racist comments.
Okay.
And some time ago, a few years ago, I asked you if you would write down your experiences in declaration form that could be used.
I did.
For,
I'm sorry, go on.
okay,
Okay, I thought I sent you it, an
No.
affidavit kind of thing.
no, you
Okay.
did not. You
Okay.
told me that you would not, and I don't know what the reason was at the time. But I wonder if now, despite the memory issue, if you would be willing to write down those things, the part that you played in declaration form, which can be used by Scientology's victims such as myself.
I will, but you have to understand, I never posted on ARS.
Okay, how about you two settle that between
We'll
yourselves?
talk about it.
No, Jerry, I'm the moderator. We gotta let people ask questions. That's an issue where you settle that. You
We'll
work it
settle.
out.
We'll settle, we'll talk
No
about
problem.
it. Okay.
Okay, but they used ARS to get you, right?
They've used everything to get Jerry.
Yeah. Okay, you'll tell him what you know later.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Here you go. Jens, right? Oh, Brian. Sorry. You
sure.
look like Jens.
That's
Where's
okay.
Jens?
Back there somewhere.
Yes. Sorry. No, you don't look the same.
No offense taken.
I just turned 61.
Tory, I was really happy to hear that your relationship with your son survived your disconnection, but I'm curious whether your still-in ex-husband has been forced to disconnect with him as a result of his continued association with you.
I will give you my son's answer. I'm Switzerland.
And the church allows him to be Switzerland?
I am not telling you that.
Okay.
My son is not telling me that.
Fair
He
enough.
says I'm Switzerland, and I respect that. I want to stay in touch with my son. I hope he's in touch with his father. I don't want this whole church thing.
Of course.
Him to be. And I recommend it for any parents. Do not get your kids in this big mess.
Yeah.
And he's thanked me 1,000 times for not bringing into it. I don't talk to him about it. When CNN interviewed me, I talked about being out in the grass and where we did the interview. When Rolling Stone magazine interviewed me, I talked about the Mondrian Hotel.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And
Yeah.
if he asked me, I would tell him, but he doesn't, and I get it. He's Switzerland.
That was Brian for the record. Okay, one last question. Or are we ready for Jesse? Okay, anybody dying for a question? Okay, Jesse, you go get ready, and Len, right?
Yes.
Okay, Len.
This doesn't qualify as a question.
Okay.
I want to thank you for the videos that you made because they touched me in a way that I can't begin to tell you. The dancing in Boston.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the one last thing I wanted to start with, actually, is thanking Paulette, Jerry, Jesse. There were so many people that left in the night. We all have the luxury of each other, but these other people left a long time ago when there was nothing, there was no support, there was no internet, and their courage should be applauded forever and thanked. And the same for Anonymous, because they weren't the same. It wasn't in the night, but they changed. They were a game changer. The media before Anonymous, when we did our 9,000 person picket around the world, and you were part of that in Canada, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's
and
right.
it was huge. And I mean, people around the world came together and spoke out and picketed. And as a result, people started writing books that wouldn't write books. People spoke out that wouldn't say their names. The media started doing interviews, and that's all. I just wanted to say thank you to the guys that left in the dark, that have maintained. And John Atack.
Get your speedy clap.
I'll take a drink.
Thank you, Tory. As predicted. Quite wonderful. We will probably have Tory back up here for some more questions because I know everybody's got lots of questions to ask her. Sometimes you hear that thing, and here's a man who needs no introduction. And that is true. I'd like to welcome Jesse Prince, to the podium. I'd also like to say that I've had the privilege of reading the first draft of Jesse's memoir, and I anticipate that everybody in this room will want to read this. This is just one of the most incredible stories, and I've read most of the books about Scientology. One of the most incredible stories, and one of the most incredible men. Jesse Prince.
Wow. I haven't done this since I was in Scientology. No. Thank you, John, for that kind introduction. What I want to talk about today, this evening, for you folks, I want to talk about OSA, Office of Special Affairs, and I want to talk about OT VIII. I'm going to start with OSA first. In 1982, I went to the int base where L. Ron and every crew were. And you know, I think I mentioned yesterday, I was brought there because L. Ron sent out a dispatch. He wanted to find the best auditor, supervisor, and cramming officer that Scientology had to offer and bring that person to the Gold Base to help him correct int management and get Scientology going again. Because at that time, there had been, as has happened many times in Scientology, a big clean out. All of int management was gotten rid of. The COCMO int, who was John Nelson at the time, was gotten rid of. Kerry Gleason, who was the executive director international of Scientology, was gotten rid of, and just many others. So there was a new crew in there, and he wanted someone that could come that actually knew what they were doing with the subject of Scientology to help him establish that, and thus I came there. Before that, I was just a true believer, a Scientologist. Said, you know, I believed. I never thought L. Ron was God, but I thought he was an inspired individual, and you know, I was a believer. I was there to do it. When I arrived at that Gold Base, I learned that no one really practices Scientology. I mean, the Scientology that I learned was just not there in evidence. No one was auditing, no one was really training, no one was really training anyone else. We were just all there doing a bunch of infighting. And it felt dirty, it felt decadent. I'm like, I rise to the top and I feel like I'm just in garbage. It's just, you know, it was cognitive dissonance, certainly on that level. And immediately I began to be briefed. I mean, I don't know who these people thought I were to expose to all of this craziness, but I was, you know, told you have to go down to Author Services International and start attending these legal meetings. You know, so that we can figure out what we're gonna do, you know, to handle the squirrels. Well, you know, squirrels are people that are you know, using Scientology without authorization. Well, how did the squirrels get there in the first place? You know, that we busy have to handle them. Well, all of those people that were in management, you know, L. Ron didn't like them anymore, hated them, and, you know, they had to go. There was about 18 of them. I think it ended up being about 22 people that were just offloaded like that, gotten rid of. No thought of what's gonna happen when we just get rid of these people. L. Ron's auditor, the guy that invented Ned for OTs, one of them, David Mail, he's kicked out, and the ex-CEO of Ron's Messengers, and on it goes. He just had a hissy fit and threw the people out on the street. Well, they started their own Scientology. And guess what? Their Scientology was way better than our Scientology. It was amazing. You know, we would sit there and we're watching. I mean, you think, we look at this church, I wonder if it's losing people. Well, back then, people were just sending in letters by the bucket load. I resign, you bastards, we hate Miscavige. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? One of the tricks L. Ron came up with to try to stem the flow of people leaving was to come up with an amnesty. Amnesty in Scientology is basically where the church tells its members all is forgiven unless you've murdered somebody or done something along that line. Just write up what you did. We forgive it, and come on back and give us your money again. You know? And it wasn't taken. Nobody was coming in for an amnesty. The letters kept coming. Resigned, one resignation after the next, and we're like, oh, we're in so much trouble. We're the next lot to be removed. Pretty soon we're gonna be out here like these other people, and everyone's gonna hate us. So we had to figure out what to do. And I started going to these meetings at Author Services to figure out what to do with all of these lawyers. And this is where I found out what Scientology actually does. Anyone that is an enemy, or anyone that had been fighting Scientology or suing Scientology or speaking out about Scientology, there was a list of the people. Of course, Paulette was on the list. Jerry was on the list. Lawrence Wallersheim was on the list. The McLeans were on the list, you know. I could just hear Miscavige, now that bitch Nan McLean and those people, and, you know, they are so vulgar in Scientology. I know I got a bit of a mouth myself, but it's like you go there, oh, my God. And L. Ron was horrible with it too. I mean, the way these people spoke to each other was just atrocious. But there was just a list of people, and I'm like, oh my God, I just didn't know that this even occurred, you know? And then I had to find out all the things that the GO had done previously with breaking in and you know, tapping phones, and then the next thing you know, I'm tapping phones. You know, I get the electronic equipment. I'm gonna tell you some of these things that I was personally involved in, you know, just so you know. You know, like, yeah, we bug people. Oh shit, how do you do that? You know, so you go to these ex-FBI, ex-CIA, ex-cops, they have all the best equipment, the parabolic mics that you can just point at a window and hear a conversation and place a little bug inside a lamp, and all of these little gadgets and little toys. So a fella named Rick got these things, and we were playing with them, and there was a couple, Bill and Holly Fennell, I'll never forget them, some of the most harmless people. They were like paper butterflies. And let's bug them, you know? So they stick the lamp in there with the bug in and stick it in their bedroom, because the woman, Holly, had got caught drinking rubbing alcohol. She came, Miscavige called her to the office. She's like this. He's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Nothing, sir. And then they start smelling this. What the hell? And they smell, and then they used to clean everything for L. Ron, and she had to have alcohol to do it. You know, she wanted this particular type of alcohol so that it didn't leave a film. And you know, L. Ron, he was kooky anyway, so that made perfect sense to him. Oh yes, we got to clean with alcohol, rub it on everything. So this woman's back there chugging this alcohol. Oh my God. So we found out about this. So it's like, well, what else is she doing? So we stick that bug in her room. Oh my God. You know, I should have went to hell for that right then. But we're listening to this poor couple, you know, how was your day? Oh, it was rough, you know, I had to clean the books, and then there was dust behind the cabinets, and then I thought I saw mice poop back there. I mean, they're just the mundane, just simple things these people are talking about. And I'm like, okay, we're waiting for them to talk about FBI agents and who their connect is and external influences, and oh, we're just waiting. And the next thing you know, it's dawn. We've fallen asleep, waiting for them to say something. They're snoring, we're snoring. You know, it's like, this was my big introduction to bugging folk, you know? So it's like, obviously I'm no good at it, so leave that to the professionals. You just tell people to do it, don't try to do it yourself. And thus it went. When David Mail was kicked out and branded a SP and everything else, it then became my responsibility to shut him down. Now, Robin Scott, another fella who I'm great friends with now, Robin Scott, Morag Belmain, Steve Bisbee had this great idea to dress up in Scientology Sea Org uniforms, go to Denmark, pretend like they were on mission, and get Scientology's secret, ultra secret, confidential materials, Ned for OTs, OT III, and whatever else they happen to have on hand. So they go walking in there, you know, and we're on mission, and everybody's yes sir, because they've been trained, and they give them these materials, and they take them and they walk out of the org. So I'm sitting in my office, it's like, oh, these damn squirrels, you know, they're already making more money than we are. They got more people. I mean, what are we gonna do with these bastards? I mean, at least we have the knots. We're just sitting there, well, what are our assets? And then we get the call, oh, they just stole the knots pack. It was like, we gotta tell L. Ron. Oh my God. When that went up, it was just like, boom, you know, oh God. Spare no expense, get them. So now we had to do something clever to get Robin Scott and Steve Bisbee and them. So what we did was we told Robin that, had a guy contact him that had been in the GO before, or had done work for the GO before, and he asked Robin to audit him because he didn't want to go into Scientology organizations for auditing because they were just too strict and too crazy, and he heard that Robin had the materials, and if Robin could audit him, he would pay him handsomely. The only trick was Robin had to leave Scotland, go back to Denmark where he stole the stuff to audit this guy because that's where he lived. And the guy invited Robin to go out. He said he had a nice castle and they would have a great weekend and just, it would all be good. Well, of course, when Robin got to that airport, we had the police waiting for him. You know, and he got out and he just thought he was going on vacation and, you know, and he got, yes, he got it. And Robin was pretty despondent about that. And Steve Bisbee and Morag Belmain, no one was bragging anymore about stealing those materials. And then we started filing the lawsuits and running in more people on them. So now we got them kind of on the run a little bit. But John Nelson arranged with another fella, Harvey Haber, to meet so that Harvey Haber could give John Nelson the materials to bring to America so that they could start using it in their organizations, which were called the Advanced Ability Centers. And they were just doing so much better than Scientology organizations. So John Nelson, we find out that he's getting ready to travel. So through a PI, we arranged a fake business deal to where John had to go to Taiwan in order to meet, to get a whole lot of money. You know, some big deal was going on. So John went there, and of course this is stuff that we had arranged. And a fellow named Rick Azaran went along with a private investigator. And I didn't really know what they were gonna do over there because they were with Marty getting briefed. And then they went. Well, a phone call came in from Taiwan. It was the private investigator. And he said, you know what, I'm not doing this. You people are about to get somebody killed, and I'm not gonna have anything to do with it. I just want you to know, I'm not involved. I'm gonna deny it, I'll go to the police myself. He was like freaked out. He didn't want to be involved in murder. We're like, me and Vicky, what the hell is he talking about, murder? What's he talking about? Well, to Vicky and I's surprise, we find out Rick and that damn PI went over there and bugged John Nelson's room to find out, you know, his travel plans. And when he left to go eat or whatever, they went and stuck heroin in his room. Now, over in Taiwan, if you get caught with that type of drug, it's a death sentence. That investigator called back, he said, I am not gonna be involved in murder. And my next thought was, you're not the only one, because I didn't know this was going on. That stuff went straight to ASI. The guy called, he knew to call ASI where Miscavige and Marty were. He knew automatically to talk to them, even though me and Vicky were the ones running the mission. At least we thought we were. It was really being run by Miscavige and Marty. And of course, that was called off. And Vicky and I looked at each other. It's like, what the hell? You know, I understand that, you know, we're running around and maybe doing a little bugging, but murder? I'm not here to kill people. I made it real clear. I'm not killing anybody, and I don't want to know about anyone getting killed, okay? And Vicky's like, me too. I don't want to kill nobody, but, you know. so that kind of let me know that the water was here, and here's my nose. There's like not much room. I'm kind of about to get way in over my head because I had read Robert Ludlum and all them damn detective books, and it was good on paper, but when you try that stuff, that's another story. So, you know, we're going in and we're getting briefed now. Okay, they're still telling us, this damn Paulette, you know, she's out there running her fucking mouth and we got to get people and that Wallersheim, you know, not one thin dime for Wallersheim, you know, and protesting and we're just raising complete hell. David Mayo, in the meantime, got the knots pack and they're celebrating, just having a party. And then we arranged again to get David Mayo this time. We arranged to have a journalist approach him and tell him, what happened? Didn't you used to be high in Scientology? And ooh, you're this magnificent person, aren't you? Pump up his ego real good. Well, actually, yes, you know. Well, I audited L. Ron and was in Scientology for so many years. And, you know, he's talking there like, listen, we want you to come to the studio. We're going to put this on TV. We're going to tell your story. Gene Ingram helped do this. So David goes to the studio, and he's busy being interviewed and all of that. While that's going on, we're at the AAC, which was closed. We've broken in, copying all their financial records, reading stuff, getting all the phone numbers, mailing lists, whatever they got, we're copying. We got everything, and we leave, and we effectively sued Mayo after that because we had all the evidence. We stole the stuff that he had stolen from us. We stole from him. You know, it was just crazy. So by the time Mayo was ready to go to court and his attorney, Gary Bright, did his best to defend him, they just couldn't keep up. And that's the point where I became an expert witness, because I was the person that went to trial and testified for the judge and showed her how the materials that David Mayo had and the materials that were stolen were one and the same. That wasn't hard to do, because when David Mayo got the materials, all he did was erase the top title, switch them around a little bit, but they were the exact same. So, and see, people hadn't realized that Mayo had those stolen materials. He had told them that he had rewritten them himself, and this wasn't from the church, this was just his stuff. My beautiful little partner over there, Nancy, was one of my spies that I had sent into Mayo that helped me pull this off, along with many other people, and we didn't even tell the spies who were the spies. We had spies spying on the spies. In case the spies screwed up, another spy would tell on them. We had all bases covered. And we effectively closed that Advanced Ability Center by doing these types of things. Now, I had been in Scientology probably maybe 12 years. No, I had probably been in maybe 8 years prior to that. Never knew this happened. Never knew. No one could have ever told me this is what my church does. No one could have ever convinced me this was even possible, because we were in the business of helping people, clearing the planet, you know, and what have you. But at the top of the organization, we were into something much more different. So I had an indoctrination into black ops, dark ops, and we're figuring out all of these juvenile, corny things to do to people. And it just started to grate on me. I started to feel like I was a little bit dead. I started to feel like I was a little bit dead inside, like I was numb, like I didn't have feelings, I didn't really care anymore. I could do this. My empathy started going. I'm like becoming a goddamn monster. I'm turning into Hubbard. I guess that's the EP of Scientology. A zillion little Hubbards everywhere. It didn't last. The joyride for me, I watched so many people come and go and get removed and all the dirt and terrible shit that we were doing. And then L. Ron died, and it was like we're all looking at each other like there's no supervision. It's like the parent is gone. We can do any damn thing, and we started doing anything. Miscavige had a birthday party at some Greek restaurant. He got the whole restaurant on a Friday night to close down, paid them enough. They locked the doors. We went in there, and there was a woman with no clothes on laying on a table with food all over her. And we were eating off the lady. Just debauchery. We're drinking, eating off this lady. I'm like digging around this area trying to see what's going on. And then there's the food fight, just trash the restaurant. It was like thousands of dollars it cost to tear up that damn restaurant. My birthday, on Hollywood Boulevard, they had just purchased that office that's ASI now. And there was a big marquee on the wall, and they didn't tell me, that anything was happening for my birthday. They just said, "Oh, we're just going to take you out to dinner." So we're driving down Hollywood Boulevard towards that huge giant marquee, and Vicky says, "Hey, Jesse, look." And I look up, and it says, "Happy birthday, Jesse Prince." Balloons and all of this going on, and I went to the party, and there were like tables of gifts. Just everything, shoes, gold, and just shit everywhere. And I'm like, I've never had this amount of presents. I've never had a birthday like this before. But this is kind of empty. You know what I mean? I can't even hardly enjoy it because I'm just not right. Well, it's like, how can we get some more money? How can we get some more money? Dave's thinking, okay, OT VIII. We got all the notes. Pat Broker's giving it to us. Raymondov's compiling the issue. And it's secret. First, they wouldn't let me see it. We're going to the ship and we're releasing this OT VIII. Secret. Finally, I said, give me the fucking thing and let me see it. I'm the top technical person, period, in the whole place. Give it to me. So they gave it to me, and I saw it. I'm like, oh, my God. I've been working for the devil all this damn time, And then they Miscavige and Midoff, they run off to the ship, and they come back, and it's like nobody's talking. They're like, got the papers, like, I don't want to talk about it. Finally, after a day or so passed, I'm like, what the hell happened at that ship? Oh, Ray Midoff tells me, it was a disaster. People started running, screaming. Why? Well, people didn't like that. I guess people still believe in God. They didn't like to hear that Jesus Christ was a lover of young boys and was gay. They didn't want to hear about L. Ron being Satan and tricking everyone and not telling everyone all this time that he was the person to fulfill biblical prophecy, and saving us from Jesus because he's just after the little boys anyway. I mean, all of this horribleness. It shook my fucking head. And that's when I started thinking, what have I gotten myself into? How bad is this gonna get? L. Ron's already dead. This is what he left. I've done every OT level here, like I said last night. And the only way I can scratch my butt is with my fingernails. Nothing's changed. I'm not OT. I still can't do nothing. And it started to dawn on me, my wasted life, all the horribleness that I had been involved in. I was born and raised, well, I wasn't born, but I was raised a Catholic. I knew right from wrong. I went to private school the majority of my life in that regard, parochial school, to paid for a good education. And it grated on me. And I got into Scientology because I was tired of church. I was tired of hearing about Jesus and tired of hearing about God and all of this, you know, intangible things that I have to believe in. I needed something more real. I wanted something like science. So Scientology was good enough. It was close enough. And at the end of it, to find out as a Catholic and a former Christian that I went from Jesus to the devil, I mean, am I stupid? And then I kept thinking about what the Bible says. It's like, many will be deceived, many will be deceived. I'm like, my dumb ass included now. You know, because I've been working for Satan and it made me feel so bad. Not that I believe it or had a conscience about that, but it's kind of like I gave up one thing that I didn't really like for something that's way worse. And it just made me feel horrible. And then I prayed. I said, God, please get me out of this. I'm sorry for what's happened here. Please get me out. And within days, I was removed. I was removed. And it was a relief. But when I was removed, you know, he was so ornery about it. Call me sir, and, you know, and all this. I already signed the waiver. I don't care about, you know, I was ready to walk out the door. But now, insisting I call him sir and screaming and papers, and I stood up and I said, you know what, fuck you. And at that point, Marty was here, another guy, Greg Wilhere, was here, and they came and they grabbed me. And of course I had been studying karate, so I got into that stance and I just like flicked them across the room. And Miscavige saw that. He said, oh, let him go, let him go, let him go. I went there, and you know, as I'm doing this, like things are getting red. I don't know why. It's like, why am I seeing this color red? I go down to my room, and I get that semi-automatic rifle that L. Ron gave me. It has a banana clip in it. Holds about 223 bullets, and I just load that thing up, and I put that banana clip in, and I had another banana clip. I filled that up. I put on my desert camel pants with all the pockets, and I put my extra banana clip here. Then I went and got my 45, loaded that clip up, one in the chamber. Put that joker in there, more clips, loaded them up, put them in this pocket. Now I got my guns. And I go walking back up to that office where Miscavige was, and I said, hey, who's sir now, motherfucker? and Miscavige was standing there, he threw his hands up like, oh, like he was being robbed. And I said, you stereotype. You know, I'm thinking, you think just because a black man with a gun, I'm not here to rob. But Norman Starkey was there, and he said, Jesse, you traitor, you can't kill us all. And I said, maybe not, but your ass will be the first to go. And David's standing there, he's like, Jesse, please, 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 we made a big mistake. Then he turns to everybody, stop, leave him alone, stop. Jesse, I'm sorry we did this all wrong, please, please, please. Okay, motherfucker. Take my guns, and I go back. I put them up, and we have a come to Jesus meeting. And he said, you know, you have to go to the RPF, you know, just for a little bit, because we have to bring order. It's so bad. Pat Broker's been running around here, and he's been drunk, and he's been creating problems, and all of Scientology is about to fall apart. If I could just get you to please just go along with me. I said, okay, but you better not cancel my search. You better not do nothing, because if you do, I will be back. And of course he did that, and I left. We went to the RPF, you know. Oh, and they, you know how they do, tell everybody how horrible we are and what big criminals we were and blah, blah, blah. And I heard this shit going on, and I wrote a note to Miscavige. I said, look, if you're not here by noon tomorrow, I'm going straight to the LA Times. Of course they weren't there. And it was like Shawshank Redemption. It was like a scene. We were raking and digging these trenches. Yes, boss. And what time is it? Because I told that fucker I'm leaving at noon. What time is it? It's 11:15. Oh, now it's 11:30. It's 11:45. And I remember calling up to the guard booth, and Gary Moorhead, a guy named Jackson, was up there. What time is it, Jackson? It's 12 o'clock, Jesse. Drop that rate. Come on, Spike. We go headed for that gate. And we're walking out. I forgot that we were in the middle of the damn desert. We didn't get far before I was completely dried out. It's like, oh, we're gonna fucking die out here. And some Indians came, because we were on the reservation. We were actually behind an Indian reservation. And some Indians came, and they picked us up in this little truck. What are you doing out here in the middle of the sun? You know, it's 12 o'clock. Oh, shit, we got to get out of here. We need to go to town. And we started explaining to them, oh, we were in Scientology. And they're like, oh, no, you're back there in that place? Don't you know they kill people back there? What the hell? Oh, you need to go straight to the police. And we were so stupid. We didn't go to the police. But we did make them take us to the main road. Made it to the main road. There's Midoff, Marty, blah, the whole shebang. Made them drive me in town, get me the best hotel they could. Told them we'd talk later. In the meantime, I ran and went and got a rental car. Brand new, biggest car I could get, Imperial, Chrysler Imperial. Drove back to that gold base, to the Happy Valley, and went and got Vicky, who at that time was in isolation, and she was sick, and she was being held. And I walked in there, I said, Vicky, let's go. Jesse, I don't know. Get your ass up, let's go. Okay. She gets up and hops in the car. Suddenly, she's just feeling better already. All that fever and cold shit is just going away. Next thing you know, we're drinking margaritas at a Mexican restaurant. And then we start driving back and forth. Tell her, fuck you, Miscavige. We're driving by the fence, and all the security's like, oh, my God. And never. They still got me back, you know. And all that's in the book, but it was rough getting out of there. It was rough getting out of there. We snuck out one time, and they got us back. And we had to ride out the way they wanted us to, and it took months. But I stood there, and I went through all of their, whatever they had to give, I took it. Told them to go fuck themselves. So when I left, they tried to hand me, okay, well, no, you're gonna wanna work this out at some point, so we're gonna be real good on your freeloader bill. No, the hell you're not. I don't want no bill. I'm done, you understand? I'm done with the subject. I'm done. I'm done with Scientology, period. There is no more. You're not getting another thing out of me. And we left Halloween with nothing. Went from California to Minneapolis in the snow. When I got out, I had on a short sleeve shirt in California. When we landed in St. Paul, Minnesota, snow was like up to here, and I didn't even have a coat. And that's how I left. I had to make it from there. And I walked out. I didn't blow. I did once, but I came back, and I confronted him. And before I left, I said, I just want to see Miscavige one more time. He wouldn't come down because he knew. He knew what was going to happen. He didn't come down. And since then, I've helped many people in court. I've done everything that I could to help people while recovering myself. Recovering my humanity, my sanity. And that's my story, and my book's coming out soon. And John's helping me. So look for that story soon. Thank you.
We're going to take a break for 15 minutes, and then we'll probably ask him some questions. I think we'd better. Thank you, Jesse.